In the last section of the course, we talked all about functions and scoping, and in the section before that, we talked about the basics of variables. In this section of the course, we're going to take variables a step further and talk about all of the advanced features around variables that are crucial to understanding JavaScript. And just like in all the previous videos, I have an index.html file with a script tag pointing to our script.js file, and this is just an empty JavaScript file called the script.js. And in order to get this running, let's just right-click index.html, click Open with Live Server, and that's going to open up. If I just drag this over, you can see we have this here. And if we just right-click Inspect, this is going to open up the console for us, so we can actually use the console and view everything. So let's minimize out this page, move the console to the right side of my screen, move over this to the left side, and now we have an environment we can get started with. So in this video, I want to specifically talk about the const keyword, which is a new way to define variables. As we are already used to, we can use let, so we can say let a equal 1, and then console.log out a, and if we save, you'll see we get 1 printed on the screen. What const allows us to do is define variables using the keyword const instead of let. So just like here where we have a keyword, name of the variable equals, and then the value, what we can do instead is replace let with the word const. And now if I save, we get the exact same result. And it's important to note const must be all lowercase and spelled just like this, C-O-N-S-T. Other than that, everything else is the same. You give it a name, set it equal to some value, and that's how you define a variable with const. But why would you need two ways to define a variable? Why not just use one over the other? Well, the big difference with const is that you cannot redefine the value of a variable. So right now we have a variable const a, and if we try to come down here and say, you know what, a actually should be 2, so we're going to set a equal to 2. Now if we save, we're going to get an error. And if we look into our console to see what this error is, you'll see that the error says uncaught type error, assignment to constant variable at script.js on line 3. And when we click it, it comes straight to here and says, hey, a is a constant variable, which is what const stands for. It stands for constant or unchanging. And we tried to change the value of a to something other than what it started at. So this immediately throws an error saying you cannot change the value of a constant variable. So this is where you'd want to use const over let, because if we have let here and save, it just works fine. It lets us change this value of a from 1 to 2. But with const, it doesn't allow us to change the value. It actually throws an error and says, hey, this is not allowed. You said this was constant and now you're changing it. So why would you want to use const when you can just use let, change it whenever you want, and you don't have to worry about the extra restrictions that come along with const? Because other than this, const and let are exactly the same. Well, the main reason you would want to use const is to let yourself know that, hey, this value a is never going to change. And if you do decide to change it, it's going to throw an error and let you know, hey, you said this wasn't going to change, but it actually changed. Which is why I personally almost always use const by default and only ever use the let keyword if I know I specifically need to change the value of that variable. If I don't want to change the value of the variable, or even if I just don't know yet if I'm going to change it or not, I'll start by defining everything as const, and then if I know I need to change it, I'll end up coming back and changing this to a let. And what this allows me to do is when I look at my code and I see variables such as, const b equals 2 and I have let a equal 1, if I see a let, I immediately know this value is most likely going to change because I only use let when values change, while when I see const here, I know, okay, this b is never going to change. It's just nice when you're reading through your code to see exactly what's changing and what's not changing, which is why I generally use const when I can and then let if I need to. But it doesn't really matter. You could use let all the time, never use const, and it wouldn't make any difference. I just personally find that being able to use both of them is nice because you can kind of leave yourself little notes by saying, oh, this is const, it's not going to change, while let means it will change. It's really just more for you than for anything else. But if you just prefer let and don't want to use const, go right ahead, you don't have to use const. That, though, is pretty much everything there is to do with the const keyword. It's just like let, but doesn't allow you to make changes. In the next video, I'm going to be talking about the var keyword, which is the third and final way to create variables in JavaScript.